The night before everything changed, the desert was silent. But silence, in the Middle East, has always been a lie. By 1967, the Arab world had not forgotten. Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, united by loss and longing, waited for the moment to reclaim what the wars of 1948 and 1956 had taken from them. Israel knew this. They were all sharpening their knives in the dark. Diplomacy had failed. The world had offered words, but no solutions. And so, the stage was set for one of the most dramatic, devastating conflicts of the modern age, the Six-Day War. It began with a whisper from the Soviets. On May 13, 1967, Moscow fed Cairo a lie. They claimed Israeli troops were massing on the Syrian border, 11 to 13 brigades, ready to strike. It wasn't true. But Egypt didn't wait to find out. Within days, Egyptian forces poured into the Sinai. On May 16, Cairo demanded United Nations peacekeepers leave the peninsula immediately. And Israel, when asked by the UN to host the peacekeeping force on its own side of the border, refused. The machinery of war was already in motion. Egypt mobilized. Then Jordan. Then Sudan. Iraq sent troops to Jordan. Saudi Arabia raised its hand, ready to fight. But the moment that sealed the fate of millions came on May 22. Egypt closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli ships. In Tel Aviv, that was not a blockade. It was a declaration. Israel responded on June 1 by forming a national unity government. 3 days later, they made the choice. They would strike first. On paper, the Arab coalition was overwhelming. 240,000 troops against Israel's 100,000. 2,500 tanks against 800. Nearly 1,000 aircraft against 300. The numbers told a story of inevitable Arab victory. But wars are not fought on paper. Israel's plan was called Operation Focus. Its goal: destroy the Egyptian Air Force before it ever left the ground. Deception was their weapon. Israeli media ran photos of soldiers on leave, lounging on beaches. Pilots flew routine training missions, but those missions were carefully designed replicas of the real attack. To keep the secret safe, Israeli intelligence even sabotaged the tracking antenna at the US Embassy. No one could know. Not even their closest ally. The pilots themselves were told only 5 hours before takeoff. And on the morning of June 5, the Egyptian air defense system, for reasons still debated, was effectively offline. Nearly 200 Israeli aircraft swept across the sky. They hit 14 Egyptian airfields in waves. The Egyptians never heard them coming. In 3 hours, 338 Egyptian planes were destroyed. 100 pilots were dead. At 11 a.m., Jordan and Syria retaliated, launching their own airstrikes against Israel. It was a gesture of honor, and a fatal mistake. Israeli jets turned east and, within hours, annihilated the Jordanian, Syrian, and Iraqi air forces. 28 Jordanian planes. 53 Syrian. 10 Iraqi. All gone. Israel lost 19 aircraft that day. But they had won the sky. And they would never give it back. On the ground, the war burned across 3 fronts. In the Sinai, Egypt had 100,000 men and nearly 1,000 tanks. Israel answered with 70,000 troops and 700 tanks, divided into 3 divisions. Their strategy was bold: attack through the northern and central routes, the opposite of what Egypt expected. At 7:50 a.m. on June 5, General Israel Tal's division pushed into Gaza. At first, Egyptian commanders hesitated, convinced this was a diversion. By the time they understood it was the main assault, Israeli forces had already reached the railway junction at Khan Yunis. The fighting was brutal. At Sheikh Zayed, Egyptian resistance was fierce, but Israeli air power broke their lines. By dawn the next day, Israeli tanks rolled into Arish. The city was eerily quiet. Then the windows opened. Gunfire rained down from balconies and rooftops. The battle for Arish became a bloody street fight, and it took reinforcements to finally secure the city. Further south, Ariel Sharon led his division toward Abu Ajila. Facing him was Egypt's 2nd Infantry Division, 16,000 men, 90 tanks. Sharon sent paratroopers behind enemy lines under cover of darkness. They sowed chaos, silenced artillery, and opened the door for Israeli tanks. The battle that followed was close, desperate, and brutal. 40 Egyptian tanks were destroyed. 19 Israeli tanks burned. But Sharon had won. Egypt's Field Marshal, Abdul Hakim Amr, heard the news and shattered. Without a clear plan, he ordered a full retreat from the Sinai. The order was vague. No routes, no stages, no coordination. It turned an army into a flood of panicked men. Israel did not chase them, not directly. Instead, they raced ahead to capture the mountain passes, the only exits from Sinai. At the Mitla and Gidi passes, the retreating Egyptians walked into a kill zone. In a single day, 10,000 Egyptian soldiers died. By June 7, Sharm el-Sheikh had fallen. By June 8, Ras Sudar. The Sinai was no longer Egypt's. On the Jordanian front, Israel had hoped for neutrality. They sent messages of peace through UN envoy Ad Bull. But President Nasser of Egypt had convinced King Hussein that victory was near. The king rejected Israel's plea. "It is too late," he said. His planes were already in the air. Jordanian artillery shelled West Jerusalem. 16 Israelis died. 20 civilians. 900 buildings were damaged. Israel responded with fury. Their jets dismantled Jordan's air force, then turned to the ground. The battle for Jerusalem was fought house by house, hill by hill. At the government house, Jordanian forces fired from the UN's own compound. Israeli reservists stormed it, took heavy losses, and pushed the Jordanians back to Bethlehem. That night, Israeli forces encircled East Jerusalem. The Jerusalem Brigade from the south. The Harel and 55th paratroopers from the north. The fiercest fight was at Ammunition Hill. Jordanian soldiers fought with terrifying resolve. Of the Israeli officers who led the assault, only 2 survived. It took 4 hours to seize the hill. By dawn on June 6, Latrun had fallen. Ramallah too. Abu Tor was secured, cutting off the old city from Bethlehem and Hebron. On June 7, Defense Minister Moshe Dayan gave the order, "Take the old city." Despite government fears, the paratroopers moved in. They met little resistance. The Western Wall, silent for 19 years, echoed again with prayers. Judea, Hebron, Bethlehem, Nablus, all captured by nightfall. The Jordanian army collapsed back across the river. On the Syrian front, the Golan Heights loomed over Israeli farmland. For years, Syrian guns had shelled the valleys below. Now, believing Nasser's lies about Egyptian victories, Syria sent its planes to strike Galilee. Israeli fighters intercepted them easily. A ground attack on Israeli water facilities was repulsed. But Syria still held the high ground. Israeli leadership was divided. Attacking the Golan meant climbing fortified slopes against a dug-in enemy. But intelligence suggested Syrian defenses were weaker than they appeared: poor communication, ill-suited tanks, collapsing morale. Without formal government approval, Moshe Dayan gave the order. On June 9, Israeli jets pounded Syrian positions. Then the ground forces climbed. The 8th Armored Brigade fought through narrow passes, taking heavy casualties, but capturing fortress after fortress. Zora, Kala, Ein Fit. In the central sector, the 181st Battalion stormed Dardara and Tel Hilal. By evening, Israeli forces reached the plateau. Reinforcements poured in. By dawn, 8 brigades were ready to break through the second line. On June 10, Syria agreed to a ceasefire. By June 11, the guns fell silent. When the sand settled, the map of the Middle East had been redrawn. Israel had lost 983 soldiers. Egypt lost 15,000. Jordan, 700. Syria, 2,500. In 6 days, Israel captured the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. 1 million Arabs now lived under Israeli military rule. It was a victory born not of numbers, but of nerve. Better leadership. Smarter intelligence. Faster decisions. But it was not the end. The Six-Day War did not bring peace. It merely planted the seeds of the next war, which would come, as everyone feared, only 6 years later. This video is brought to you by Skillshare. In a world that never stops moving, standing still is not an option. Skillshare is the online learning community where more than 22,000 classes await you, on videography, productivity, photography, and beyond. If you've ever dreamed of starting a YouTube channel, Skillshare is where that dream takes shape. Over 500 courses on After Effects alone, from beginner basics to advanced techniques that will surprise even the pros. Premium membership starts at around $10 a month. But right now, the first 300 people to use the link in our description can get 2 months completely free. Those spots disappear fast. We're working on more stories from the front lines of modern warfare. If you want to walk through history with us, subscribe. Hit the bell. Don't miss the next one. And to everyone supporting us on Patreon and YouTube, this channel exists because of you. From the team at Epic Horror Earth, thank you. We'll see you on the next battlefield.